You are alive right now because someone, somewhere in the unthinkable depths of time, watched the world burn and did not run. Every other creature fled. Every other set of eyes saw the glow on the horizon and felt only terror. But one of your ancestors, some small and trembling figure on an African plain more than 1,000,000 years ago, looked at the flames and felt something else entirely. Curiosity, hunger, maybe even wonder. At that single moment of not running, that one flicker of defiance against every survival instinct screaming in their skull, built the entire world you're sitting in right now. Your cities, your languages, your oversized, energy-devouring brain, all of it traces back to fire. So ask yourself this: what if that ancestor had run? What if no human in any generation across any landscape had ever tamed a flame? What would you be? Most of us treat fire like a convenience, a stovetop, a match, a lighter flicked under a birthday candle. We have domesticated it so thoroughly that we forget what it actually did to us. Fire did not just warm our ancestors, it rebuilt them from the inside out. It reshaped their teeth, shrank their guts, inflated their skulls, restructured their social lives, and pushed them into every frozen and hostile corner of this planet. Without fire, you are not looking at a slightly less comfortable version of humanity. You are looking at a fundamentally different animal, one that might never have developed language as we know it, one that might never have left the tropics, one whose brain, starved of the caloric surplus that cooked food provides, might have plateaued at a size barely larger than a chimpanzee's. This is not a question about campfires. This is a question about whether you would exist at all. The oldest, widely accepted evidence of controlled fire use comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where a team led by Francesco Berna at Boston University identified burned bone fragments and ash deposits dating to approximately 1,000,000 years ago. Not wildfire remnants blown in by wind, but material burned inside the cave itself in a consistent location, suggesting deliberate, repeated use. Farther north and later in time, the site of Gesher Beno Yaakov in Israel, excavated by Nama Goren, Inbar and her colleagues at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, revealed clusters of burned flint and charred plant remains dating to around 790,000 years ago, arranged in spatial patterns that imply hearths. These were not accidents. These were traditions. Someone taught someone else how to keep the flame alive, and that chain of teaching never broke, not once, for 1,000,000 years, all the way down to you. Harvard biological anthropologist Richard Wrangham built an extraordinary case in his work that cooking was not a luxury our ancestors stumbled into after they had already become human. It was the engine that made them human. His argument, supported by comparative anatomy and nutritional science, is elegant and unsettling. Raw food is expensive to digest. A chimpanzee spends nearly half its waking life chewing. Its gut is enormous relative to its body, a massive fermenting vat needed to break down tough, fibrous plant material and extract enough calories to survive. Brains, meanwhile, are calorically greedy organs. Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler, in their expensive tissue hypothesis published in 1995, demonstrated that gut tissue and brain tissue are both metabolically costly, and that in primates you generally cannot expand one without shrinking the other. Something has to give. Fire gave. Cooking externalizes digestion. It breaks down proteins, gelatinizes starches, and ruptures cell walls before food ever reaches your stomach. The result is a flood of accessible energy from smaller quantities of food, processed by a smaller gut, freeing caloric budget for the most expensive organ in your body. Your brain consumes roughly 20% of your resting energy. Without cooking, maintaining a brain this size would be metabolically impossible on any realistic foraging schedule. So strip fire away. Imagine a lineage of hominins that never cracked the code. you would see creatures locked into a body plan dictated by raw consumption. Massive jaws, enormous molars designed for endless grinding, a barrel-shaped torso housing a gut large enough to ferment uncooked tubers and raw meat for hours. Their brains would be constrained, not by genetics alone, but by thermodynamics. You cannot run a supercomputer on a trickle of power. Without the caloric surplus of cooked food, the selective pressure that drove encephalization in our lineage would stall. These fireless humans, if we can even call them that, would likely plateau somewhere around the cranial capacity of Homo erectus, or perhaps even earlier forms. Complex symbolic thought, recursive language, abstract planning across seasons, none of it guaranteed, none of it inevitable. Now close your eyes for a moment and feel what that world would be like. You are standing on a high ridge in eastern Africa. It is 200,000 years ago, and the sun has just dropped below the horizon. The temperature is falling fast, and there is nothing between your skin and the night air but a thin layer of body hair, thicker perhaps than what you carry now, because without fire your lineage never lost it. Your gut aches with the slow work of digesting a handful of raw tubers you spent the afternoon pulling from cracked earth. Around you, your group of maybe 12 individuals huddles close, not for conversation, not for storytelling, but for warmth and mutual surveillance. Somewhere in the grass below, you can hear movement, a rustle, a low exhalation. Your eyes are not built for this darkness. You cannot see the predator, but it can see you. Without fire, there is no perimeter of light, no circle of safety, no crackling barrier between your soft body and the leopard's jaws. You grip a rough stone tool and wait. There will be no sleep tonight, not real sleep. Your group trades shallow, broken rest in shifts, each member waking at the smallest sound. Night, for you, is not a time of recovery. It is a siege. This is not speculation dressed up as science. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner at the University of Utah spent years documenting the role of firelight among the Juhoansi people of the Kalahari. She found that daytime conversation is overwhelmingly practical. Resource distribution, coordination, complaints, conflict. But at night, around the fire, the content of conversation transforms. 81% of firelight talk involved storytelling, singing, discussion of people not present, and the entrainment of shared cultural knowledge. The fire did not just protect humans from predators, it created a new temporal zone, a social space that existed nowhere else in nature, a space where culture could be transmitted, where myths could be born, where the building blocks of collective identity took shape. Without that space, the cognitive and social infrastructure for cumulative culture, the ratchet mechanism that lets each generation build on the last, may never have developed. Technology would stagnate, each generation reinventing the same crude tools, never accumulating, never compounding. And here is the twist that should unsettle you. Fire did not just change what humans could do, it changed what humans are. Your body right now carries the signature of 1,000,000 years of fire dependence. Your jaw is small, your teeth are reduced. Your gut is short relative to other great apes. You are, in a very real biological sense, an obligate cook. Studies in nutritional science have shown that humans on entirely raw diets, even with access to modern food processing like blending and juicing, frequently suffer chronic energy deficits. Women on raw diets in industrialized settings show significantly higher rates of amenorrhea, a cessation of menstruation indicating caloric insufficiency. You are not an animal that can simply return to rawness. You are already transformed. Fire is not a tool you use. It is a force that shaped the vessel you live inside. Without it, the vessel would be someone else entirely. Thicker-jawed, smaller-brained, tropically imprisoned, nocturnal prey rather than apex predator. The colonization of Europe and Asia, which required surviving winters that dropped well below freezing, would have been biologically impossible without fire for warmth and for rendering frozen meat edible. The Neanderthals, who thrived in Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, did so with fire at the center of their existence. Sites like Abric Roman in Spain, studied by Udall Carbonell and colleagues at the University of Rovira e Virgili, show dozens of superimposed hearth layers spanning tens of thousands of years. Fire was not incidental to Neanderthal life. It was structural. Remove it, and cold climate hominins vanish from the record. The world beyond the tropics belongs to the animals alone. Think about what that means for everything that followed. No agriculture, because agriculture demands stored surplus and processed grain. No metallurgy, which is literally the manipulation of fire at higher temperatures. No ceramics, no glass, no chemistry. The entire arc of material civilization rests on the mastery of combustion. And combustion begins with a single, small, trembling flame held in hominin hands 1,000,000 years ago. Take it away, and you do not get a simpler version of human history. You get no human history at all. You get biology without culture. You get evolution without acceleration. You get a clever ape, perhaps the cleverest on the savannah, but an ape nonetheless, bound by the same caloric constraints and predator pressures as every other mammal that ever lived. So the next time you see a flame, any flame, the blue ring on a gas burner, the glow of a candle at dinner, the distant orange pulse of a wildfire on the evening news, understand what you are looking at. You are looking at the oldest partnership in your species' history. You are looking at the thing that made you possible. Somewhere in the deep dark of 1,000,000 midnights, an ancestor of yours held a burning branch and did not let go. They carried it back to the group. They fed it dry grass and watched it grow. They fell asleep in its warmth and woke up alive. And they did it again the next night and the next, and every night after that, until fire was no longer something they found, but something they were. You are still sitting in that circle of light. You have never left it. And if they had run, if they had flinched, if they had let the flame die in the rain and never tried again, the darkness would have swallowed everything, including you.